A lot of people are starting their own business. And what we do in the marketplace is pretty unique in terms of being able to help people access money in their 401ks, their IRAs, penalty and tax free.
Hey, this is Dennis Consorti with Snackable Solutions, and I am here with Daniel Blue. Daniel, how are you?
Hey, Dennis, doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
I appreciate it, and we can be open with people here. You're actually recovering from some stuff. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, man, I have not left my house for about a week now. Got COVID like many other people. What's crazy is we're doing this podcast on a Tuesday, and last week I had different podcasts that I was going to be a guest on. And I went to my email and my text message, and I went to reach out to the host to reschedule. And all three of them had COVID too. And they're just like, hey, I needed to reschedule with you. So this works out great. And man, that kind of gave me a clue last week, just the amount of people that are sick at this time. And kind of makes sense with everyone getting together for the holidays and the weather cooling down. And it's flu season. So crazy times.
I can imagine. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. And I think one of the outcomes of that is it really gives us a sense of just how short life is. And one of the things that's been in the news lately has been the Great Resignation. You've been paying attention to that. What have you seen?
Yeah, I think the number I read in the Wall Street Journal the other day was recently last month. They're saying about 5 million people, 4 million people quit their jobs. A lot of people in the healthcare space, the service space. I see that, and I kind of put two and two together, plus getting feedback from my staff and our clients and our people that we're looking to help is a lot of people are starting their own business. And what we do in the marketplace is pretty unique in terms of being able to help people access money in their 401ks, their IRAs, penalty and tax free. And there's usually a light bulb that goes off when somebody that quits their job, and maybe you quit your job, you're listening to this right now, and you have this idea of starting a business. Well, starting a business takes money. And I started my business 3 years ago, maxed out credit cards, emptied out savings. And it's always nice to have another option to fund a business. And not a lot of people are aware that they can actually use a retirement account, penalty and tax free, to fund a business. So I think when we look back at this time in history, we're going to see a lot of entrepreneurs form, a lot of people that are taking advantage of the time that we're in and starting a business in some way, shape, or form because of how far technology has come, and just looking at the fact that a lot of people are having to provide an outlet to work remote. Some companies don't have that ability. I think a lot of employees right now want to have some kind of remote capability. And if employers can't offer that, I think employees are just saying peace out.
Do you think that this remote work concept is the reason why people are quitting their jobs, or do you think there might be another reason?
I think that's up for debate. I was having dinner with somebody in my family that lives out in California, and he works for a construction company. And he doesn't work remote. He's out in the field every single day in his boots and doing jobs. So his particular position does not do remote, but his company employs engineers and architects and construction workers and all that kind of fun stuff. But one thing that he told me that kind of stuck out to me is they're hiring a bunch of people right now, and they're having a tough time hiring. And one of the things that they're having to put in their material to hire is they're having to put language in their advertisements saying that you can work remote part-time. And he was just telling me, and he was just so surprised. He's just like, dude, I've been working for this construction company for decades. And the fact that we have to offer a position and say that you can work remote, he's like, we're freaking construction, dude. Like, why do we even have to do that? He's like, but we have to do that because every other company is putting language in there saying that they're looking to hire and you can work remote. And we have to do it to keep up. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that people are realizing that their jobs can be done remotely. And that's the direction that everything is going in. We have the technology to support that in most industries. And the other thing I would say is that in addition to that language, some companies may want to put language into their job posts about the emotional side of the job that they're offering, where it's not just a job, but it's really something that gives people purpose. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why people move towards entrepreneurialism is when you have your own company, it gives you a sense of purpose, a sense of ownership, a sense of control. Is that what you find, or do you see it differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think people want to be heard. People want to be a part of the solution. I think as a leader of a company, one of your job descriptions, one of the duties you have to do is you don't always have to have the best idea. A lot of times I don't have the best idea, but my job is to listen to the team, get everyone's idea, and ultimately I have to choose which idea sounds the best, right? So people want to feel like they're a part of that idea. They're a part of that solution. They're a part of fixing that problem. And obviously, pay is important, but I've been around a lot of people where significance or being felt, being rewarded in other ways, words of affirmation mean more to them than pay, right? Or what they're doing to impact the client, the service, how they feel means more than money, right? So you really have to understand your team in terms of what they're looking for beyond just the paycheck.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so now let's talk about your company a little bit. Tell us about it, about Quest Education.
Yeah, so we're a firm out here in Las Vegas. Got a staff of about 12 employees, full-time W-2 employees out here, all in the valley here in Las Vegas. We've had to adapt. Pre-COVID, I used to see my team every single day, go inside their offices and give them fist bumps and have company meetings and just chit chats in the coffee break and break room, and just what a lot of you guys did listening to this. And like a lot of you, things changed and we had to adapt and start working remote. And there were some challenges there since we never did that before. So basically what our company does is identifying and helping people access money in their retirement accounts, penalty and tax free. So there's a very powerful retirement account out there that's called a solo 401k. And we like to cater to solopreneurs. So if you're a consultant, freelancer, business owner without any W-2 employees, then the IRS does allow you to set up this special kind of retirement account, which is called the solo 401k. And the solo 401k allows you to have a ton of flexibility where you can essentially liberate your 401k, your IRA, and use it how you want to use it instead of just relying on Wall Street and the IRS to make all the decisions for you where you feel like you're trapped.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, in addition to this great resignation, we're also in the middle of the greatest amount of inflation we've seen in 30 years. And I feel like uh, 401ks and other types of investments are really something that people need to look at, especially today, because of inflation and other factors. Is that what you think, or do you see it differently?
I think it just comes down to knowing your options. It's a big reason why I wrote the book that I wrote. It's called Blueprint to Your Best Retirement. You can pick it up on Amazon. And the book and what our staff teaches and really what we preach to anyone that's willing to listen is no one cares about your money more than you do, right? And we've been conditioned to think a certain way. The way that retirement accounts are set up now is completely different 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but a lot of the same thinking still applies. People think that, let's just say you're 40 years old right now and you have this 401k, you're probably thinking that this money is out of sight, out of mind, it's locked up and you can't touch this money. And that's not true. There are some ways where you can use that money without paying 30% in penalties and taxes to the IRS. There are ways you can use that money beyond just the stock market. And a lot of people, once they realize, oh, shoot, I can access my retirement account before I retire. Oh, shoot, I can access my retirement account money without having to pay the IRS 30% in penalties and taxes. Well, if that's the case, what if I could use this money to invest in crypto? What if I could use this money to invest into my own business? What if I could use this money to pay off my high interest rate credit card debt? What if I could use this money to invest in real estate, right? So I don't think there's one way to attack inflation. You can read the news articles and look at Twitter, and everyone will say that crypto is the remedy for inflation, or gold is, or real estate. And there's all truth in a lot of those things. But I think it just comes down to just having options. And someone that wants to do better in terms of maybe starting a business or they're an entrepreneur, all we really want are just options. And the more options that we can have, the better we can game plan to start winning more.
So you mentioned a book, Blueprint to Your Best Retirement. What inspired you to write that book? And if I were to read it, what are some of the major takeaways I would get?
Yeah, one would be exactly how to access your IRA 401k penalty and tax free, like the actual how and the steps to take to make that happen is number one. And then number two is how to make money tax free. That's another way to help with inflation, right? Things are getting more expensive. Taxes are going to be increasing. They're already increasing, right? So how can you have a bucket of money that's 100% tax free? That's a strategy that I talk about in my book. So really what inspired me is just kind of looking at what we've done over the years. Our company has over 1,000 customers in all 50 states, and we've helped a lot of people over the years. And everything that we do is essentially over the phone, educating the customers over the phone, and taking them by the hand, and helping them set up their accounts, and providing them the education and just the customer service that they need to maintain the account. And it just dawned on me, I'm just like, man, there's no reason why I can't put a lot of the information that we provide to people one-on-one. I can't put this in a book. But I wanted my book to be different than a lot of other financial books out there, because a lot of financial books out there intimidate people, right? There are books that are written in a way that confuse people. The words are very big and fancy, and it bores people to death. A lot of the books are super thick and they take a long time to read. So I'm like, I want to write a book that people can pick up and read in a day or two. And it's simple to follow, easy to digest, easy to connect the dots. And when they get done reading it, they can immediately take action and start seeing results in some way, shape, or form. And that was my intention behind the book.
Makes good sense. And what about your company? What inspired you to start your company? I'd love to hear your founder's story, kind of where you started and what just drove you to say, you know what, I need to do this thing.
Yeah, I think it comes down to I don't have this cool Gary Vee story that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I came out an entrepreneur out of the womb. It was my dream to be a business owner. That's not me. For me, it really just came out of by necessity and by just wanting more. I grew up playing sports my whole life, so I do think I have some natural competitiveness. And I love that sports and business have a lot of parallels. But I grew up with a single mom. And so financially, there was some struggle along the way. And I just knew that I didn't want to struggle as I got older. I found sales at a young age, got introduced to sales when I was 18 years old. So I think sales and sports played a big part in me becoming an entrepreneur. I did pretty decent in sales, and made some decent money in my late teens and early 20s. I failed enough times with different things along the way. I remember thinking, and if I can just make $100,000, like that's it. Like, mama, I made it. I'm rich. I thought $100,000 was like $100 million, because I'd never seen that kind of money before. And I remember making that first money, that first 100,000 when I was about 20 years old. And, I spent it before I got it because I didn't know how to deal with it. Right. So in having some of those growing pains in my early 20s, like messing up my credit score, not filing my taxes the right way, not setting up an LLC, not having a budget, not investing money, not playing the money game the right way. Because I made those mistakes in my early 20s, I was able to realize and learn from those mistakes, and kind of righted the ship in my mid 20s. And right about 24, 25, 26 years old, I was in a pretty good spot financially because I learned from my mistakes, and got to the point where I realized I'm a pretty good employee. I do truly believe the best business owners out there were really good employees, right? They're team players. They got the most out of their teammates. They went the extra mile. They solved problems within the business. They overachieved. They did things without being told to do, whether it's picking up the trash, whether it's closing the biggest deal, staying late, coming early, right? You do all these little things. And after you do them for a certain period of time, you kind of realize, like, man, I could do this. I could be the captain of my own ship. Like, why can't I do this on my own? So I got to that point in my mid 20s, started thinking about that, and then eventually was able to kind of just put all the chips together, all the chips on the table, and started the business 3 years ago. And like I mentioned earlier on the show, I just maxed out a bunch of 0% credit cards, emptied out my savings, and really went all in on this venture because I felt that it was something that had a really good opportunity, a good runway. It just needed some capital.
That's great. And you mentioned struggle. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, particularly when they're starting out. They struggle with their finances. And you spoke about using retirement savings. Are there other financial problems that entrepreneurs struggle with where maybe you could give them a little bit of direction?
What's really important is businesses take time, right? There's those people that knock it out of the ballpark the first year. they taste success early in the game. And that's cool. Like kudos to them. But most businesses take time to develop, right? It takes time to penetrate the market. It takes time to solve the problem and get paid, right? So that being said, it's super important that your personal finances are in a good spot, because your personal finance and your business finances, they're almost together, right? So like when I started Quest Education, I just knew that it was going to take some time, right? So I wouldn't be where I am today if I was a knucklehead with my money. Luckily, I was a knucklehead with my money 12 years ago, right? I was spending more than I was making. But going into business, it's really important that you have your money right. And what I mean by that is just don't be an idiot. Like just because you see people on social media going to Miami and traveling and buying a new car doesn't mean you need one, right? Like it's so much easier to run a business when you're not maxed out on credit cards. It's so much easier to run a business when you have a cushion, you have some money in the bank. It's so much easier to run a business when you know you're spending less than what you're making within your household, right? Being smart with your budgeting and your money is really important. You have to be okay seeing other people do better than you. Like I'm completely okay seeing some of my friends and colleagues, people younger than me, people older than me, doing better than me financially. They're spending more money and they have a certain lifestyle that exceeds mine. Could I keep up with them? Sure, I could. I could use a credit card or I could take money out of my investment account and do that, but I have my own plan, right? So don't get caught up in what other people are doing. What they're doing is what they're doing. They're in a different chapter, they're writing their own book. You're doing what you're doing. So you got to really be patient and you have to make sure that your personal finances are on point, especially your credit. Your credit score is massive. Like you don't have to, but it's a lot easier to get your business going and invest into it and grow the business when you have a good personal credit score. If you got a 500, 600 credit score and you're trying to be in business, that person that's got a 700 credit score that you're competing with, they're probably going to beat you or they're going to have a better chance of beating you.
One of the things you mentioned was in order to start your business, you did it the same way I started my first business. You maxed out a bunch of 0% credit cards. If you had to do it over again, would you have started with that cushion? Like, would you have done something differently?
Yeah, no, I would have done it the same way. Obviously, I made a lot of mistakes. All of us make mistakes is hiring, firing, strategy, right? Knowing when to quit. It's okay to have a bad idea. Not every idea is going to be great. I spent time doing things that I probably should have stopped doing, but I was too stubborn, right? So that's why it's really important to have a good team around you, people that are willing to speak up. You have to foster an environment where your team is willing to say you're wrong, right? Like, I don't always want to be right. If I'm right every single time, like we're in trouble because I just know the law of averages, right? So there'd be definitely some changes I would have made there. But as far as financially speaking, I felt good about how we made it happen because I went into starting the business with a really low overhead personally. I was driving paid off cars. What it took for me to live every month was relatively low. So I was able to just put in a bunch of money into the company without having to suffer personally financially. And then having a pretty good credit score helped as well.
I agree with all of that. And it's funny. One of the tactics I use is I like to be wrong. And so sometimes if I want a good idea, I'll put a really bad idea out on the table so that people then respond with better ideas. I like doing that. And when it comes to teams, you mentioned overachievement and being humble enough to pick up the trash and all of those things. I had very similar lessons in my career. One of the complaints that people have, particularly from, you look about the same age as me, so from our generation, oftentimes people will complain that younger generations, they aren't as engaged in their job, or they don't want to deliver as much, or they feel like the expectations are too high, or that they deserve more than their position would dictate. Is that your experience, or do you have a different experience? And do you have any advice for people on how to motivate younger people when they're hiring?
Yeah, man. I think you really just have to find out what makes them tick and figuring out what their button is. Everyone is different, right? So you have to spend one-on-one time and get to know them and figure out what really makes them tick, right? Is it they're the first ones in their family to work in corporate, or first ones. Like, I'll give you an example right now. One of our employees, she's going to school right now, and she just loves that we work around her schedule to have her go to school, and she kicks butt. Like, she does what she needs to do with us. There's some times where she has to be gone half a day because she has an exam, but we just have an open line of communication. And I've told all my employees this. Look, I'd love every single one of you guys to stay with me forever, but I realize that some of you guys may be using me as a stepping stone, and I'm okay with that. Like, that's just the reality. I use other companies as stepping stones. So I'm just pretty transparent with them and just letting them know where I see the current situation, the landscape. But then on a quarterly basis, at the end of every year, just kind of that random one-off meeting, just checking in with them, right? Like, hey, how do you feel like things are going? Like, what's working? What's not working? And that's one of my favorite questions to ask the team. Is like, okay, what's working right now? Like, what do you feel like is really working in our environment and what you're doing? And it's like, okay, well, what's not working? Like, what are you not happy with? And sometimes people want to just complain, just to complain, and they just want to feel heard. That's part of just who humans are. But a lot of times there's some merit in what they're saying, and just coming together to figure out how we can help you accomplish your goal. Because if you can accomplish the goal of your staff, and you can give them what they want, you're probably going to get what you want. You're probably going to get the success that you want. So it's a matter of figuring out how everyone can win together.
That's good advice. It sounds like what I heard was flexibility is important, communications and transparency are important, and aligning interests are important, making sure that their goals align with your goals. That's great stuff. And when it comes to figuring out what makes people tick, we all want to know what makes ourselves tick. And when it comes to entrepreneurs, there's this thing inside of us where we say, you know what, I'm ready to start a business. Now, what you're talking about here is a solution for people to start a business who maybe are in that employee role right now. How does somebody know when it's their time to start a business?
Yeah, I think number one is, I don't think there's ever going to be the perfect time, right? My opinion is the stars are never going to align for you to do it. Like, you have to be practical about it. Can you afford to make it happen? Just go into it thinking that it's going to take some time for your business to generate revenue. I would rather go into the equation thinking that, so in that way I have a plan. When I started my business, I had some money in the bank. And the reason why I had some money in the bank is when I was an employee, I spent way less than what I made. And I spent way less than what I made for a good chunk of time. During that chunk of time, I was able to save money. I also made sure that my credit score was on point. I made sure that my taxes were on point. I made sure that I was healthy before I made that jump. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be done. On the contrary, meaning, let's just say you're getting down to your last few pennies and the company squeezed you out and it's a Hail Mary and you make it happen. Like, hey, I know that's worked for some people too, where their back was against the wall. They had no money in the bank, and all of a sudden they started this business and things took off. Like, respect. I know that can be done as well. But at the end of the day, if you have a job that gives you a decent amount of pay and you have the ability to live below within your means, save as much money as you can and really make sure that you can be prepared to where when you quit the job, you're able to move forward full speed ahead and start investing into the business, because having more capital, more resources to deploy is certainly going to help, whether you're using the money for VAs, marketing, product. It can stunt a business if you don't have the capital that you need.
Makes sense. And that brings us to my favorite part of this interview, our snackable solution. So, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and tell us what your snackable solution is?
Yeah, someone that quit your job recently, or you've got this 401k from an old job. A solution to access that money penalty and tax free is to take that 401k and convert it into what's called a solo 401k. And then from there, you can pull a certain amount of money out, penalty and tax free, and you can use that money however you want. You can use it to pay off high interest rate credit card debt, for example. There's a lot of people we've helped out over the years where They're getting crushed in 20% interest rate credit cards. The credit card debt is costing them money. All the interest is piling up. It's stressing them out. It's bringing their credit score down. And when they learn that they can use a solo 401k and access that money penalty and tax free to pay off the credit card debt, it's a huge remedy. It's a big weight that's lifted off their shoulders. So, that's one way. If you're someone that has high interest rate credit card debt and a 401k from an old job, there's a possibility to pay off your debt in one shot. Another solution is to use the solo 401k to fund a business, right? Maybe you need 10,000, 20,000 to launch your online business or launch whatever kind of business you're looking to set up. So if you are interested, you can always just Google solo 401k and solo 401k. There's a bunch of information out there. It's not some new retirement account that just came out. It's IRS approved and a ton of solutions with your own money.
All right. So basically, to set up a solo 401k, they can pretty much just Google it, or are there some general steps they can expect to take?
Yeah, I mean, if you Google it, you'll see all the companies that offer solo 401ks. So, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard, the big Wall Street companies, they all set up solo 401ks. Our company, so if you go to danielblue.me, that's my website, gives you access to a bunch of free information and links to a couple of our services. We set up solo 401ks. The difference between our solo 401ks and solo 401ks with like Fidelity, for example, is our solo 401ks are self-directed, meaning you can use the solo 401k to invest outside the stock market. So you can invest into crypto, real estate, private businesses, for example. Solo 401k with Fidelity, on the other hand, you can only use that money to buy Tesla stock, buy Apple stock. So once you start getting deeper into the solo 401k world, you're going to want to determine, are you trying to have a solo 401k in the stock market arena, or are you wanting to have options outside the stock market? And that's some of the nitty gritty area there.
That's great. And are there any other ways people should try to contact you besides danielblue.me?
Danielblue.me is the hub. It gives you access to my book, my podcast called How Winners Win. Gives you access to all my social media links, and then a link to my company, Quest Education, and a bunch of other free resources as well. So that's the hub, and gives the information that you would need.
Awesome. Daniel Blue, thank you so much for your snackable solution. I'm sure that this will bring tons of value to our listeners, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Dennis.